Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday Live. This is episode 13, and we'll get started here. Uh, some things been happening in the news, and just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if any of you watch Star Trek regularly or like Star Trek, but you may or may not know that some people have been making fan films on YouTube. And they've done this for years. A couple that come to mind are the Star Trek New Voyages, and then they renamed it Phase 2. Um, and then there's another one called Star Trek Continues. They've been making fan films for years, episodes in the original Star Trek genre there. So and they've done a pretty good job. And then some feature movies were made. One was Star Trek Renegades uh, that was put out, but um, here recently there was a group that were making a program called Star Trek Axanar, and when their crowdfunding account reached about $1 million, the Paramount and CBS filed a lawsuit on them to try and shut them down. From what I've heard, that they've come to some kind of a settlement, but CBS and Paramount um, set forth some guidelines for the people that want to make these fan films, and some of the guidelines are pretty harsh. Like you can only make a film that's 15 minutes long, and you can't have any professional actors in it. They all have to be amateur actors. So having George or William Shatner um, or anyone like that come and be in a show is prohibited. And there's some other rules and regulations that they have put in that basically keep people from doing these films. And I think that's pretty sad because I enjoy these films, and a lot of the ones that are put out are really um, well made, and they're building sets for these shows and getting equipment, and they're really making some good quality shows. I think the one thing with the Axonar was that I had heard that they were putting out Star Trek merchandise along with that. And after Axonar was finished production, they were planning on making films that were for profit instead of not for profit. And I've heard both sides of this. And, one, the people from Axonar, they say they're not for profit and they're not going to make for-profit movies after that. And you can go to their site and you can read their statement. And then I've read some things that say that the people at Axonar wanted to do this to first make the Axonar film, but then make for-profit films. But if it's not a Star Trek film they're going to make for profit, then why not? If the Axonar movie is a not-for-profit venture and it's being funded by uh, the public, then why can't they do this? Because they're not making a profit and they're just covering their expenses. And if their next movie isn't a Star Trek film, then they did spend the money that the public gave them to make. Star Trek fan films, but I don't see a problem with them doing other films as long as the Star Trek fan films are not for profit. And they even have a tax exemption, not for profit tax status. So I, it keeps going back and forth, and it's really hard to tell who is right and who is wrong. And but I being able to do these films anymore is just kind of sad for the fans that like these films, and also like the films that the Paramount and CBS put out. I mean, there's going to be a new Star Trek show come out on CBS in 2017, and they should be able to come to some kind of mutual agreement so that everybody can be happy, the fans and the studio and the television network. But I hope that gets worked out, and I hope eventually that the people making the fan films will be able to do that again because I've liked watching those, uh, especially the Star Trek Continues because for one thing, it has Chris Doohan playing the role of Scotty. If you don't know who Chris Doohan is, he's James Doohan's son. James Doohan was the person that played Scotty on the original series, and Chris does a fabulous job of playing that role, and I hope he gets to continue doing it. Um, in other news, you may have heard about the shootings that's been going on. There was another officer involved shooting where um, a couple were pulled over for a broken taillight, and the man who was the passenger, this was a black couple, and the man who was the passenger told the officer that he had a um, concealed carry permit and that he was carrying a weapon on his person. And the officer asked him to show his identification. And when the man reached for his wallet, the officer shot him because he thought he was reaching for his gun. Well, first off, the officer told him to show his identification, and that's what he was going for. I mean, the officer had him in sight. He was standing right there at the car, and could see him. So why shoot him? That's that's just another thing. There's not a whole lot of information yet about it, and the videos that were shown um, were didn't show the actual shooting. The woman started recording after the officer shot the man. Uh, so you see what took place right before the shooting, just after. Um, so there's still a lot to be figured out on what just happened with that. And then after that shooting, there was the one before where the person outside selling CDs was somebody called the cops because somebody said that he had pointed a gun at a person, so the cops were called, and the uh, situation that followed there. The officers were wrestling with the man, and one of the officers said he had a gun, and then he was shot in the chest and died. So now you have the protests in the street, and during one of these protests, five officers in Dallas were shot by a sniper, and now the people uh, are saying that it's the protesters' fault that these officers got shot by a sniper when it's not the protesters' fault. The protesters were being peaceful. They weren't causing any trouble, and this guy that was doing the shooting was actually rejected by these protesters, the Black Lives Matter people, because they just thought he was too far out there. So it's not their fault. They were protesting peacefully, and this guy, he got on a building and started firing at police, um, and 5 officers were killed. But to say it was the protesters' fault, they can't control what one individual does. Um, they didn't accept him into their group because they thought he was too too mentally unstable, I guess. And looks like they were right. But it's not their fault. They didn't do anything. And then I saw a video where some of the protesters they went to one of the group members' homes and they were standing on the front yard, and all these officers in riot gear started storming the lady's front yard in her house because these people were standing there. That's just crazy. Why officers would do that? I mean, if you're so afraid of people like that, out there, you're an officer, and you've got all this riot gear on, you've got all these weapons you're carrying, and these unarmed people are standing there in a yard, not doing anything, maybe talking, maybe saying things to you, but they're not threatening you. And then to come up in somebody's yard and start throwing people around and pushing people and shoving and all this, that's just uh, uh, this country was formed on a constitution, and the police officers are supposed to be protecting people's constitutional rights, not stepping all over them. And you know, anybody that watches that video, that's just they have to say that that's wrong. And then you've got people saying that the uh, Black Lives Matter group are all to blame for all this. Making the police officers react this way. Well, they're peacefully protesting, and police officers are getting all bent out of shape about it. So that's the problem with the police force. Maybe the way the police officers are trained, I don't know. But I think the only way to stop this kind of behavior, yes, I think the only way really to try and stop this kind of behavior is make the people that hire these officers responsible. The cities, the counties, and the states that hire these officers, they should be made to be held accountable when.
What's that term? You can't sue City Hall?
Yeah, well, you can try. But people, these cities, counties, and states hire these officers and train these officers, and a lot of times they condone this behavior. Just look at the Tamir Rice shooting. The officers pulled up in their patrol car, and at first, when I saw this video, I thought the officer had rolled down the window and shot him, but actually, the officer got out of the patrol car and shot him. But they were cleared of any wrongdoing because they believed that he had a gun, and so they just didn't bother to announce themselves, say anything to the boy. They just got out and shot him. Well, it used to be when an officer fired his gun, there was some accountability there, but there doesn't seem to be anymore. If an officer fires his gun and shoots somebody, he can just say that I was in fear for my life, and that seems like that's good enough for everybody. Well, it
Good enough
shouldn't.
for me.
It shouldn't be that way. When you fire your weapon, you should be absolutely sure that whoever you're firing at does have a weapon of their own and just not a toy that they're playing with in a public park.
Really?
That
Then
that
don't you think you should, like sue the toy companies that make guns that look so realistic the police can't tell the difference between a toy and a real gun?
well,
I mean, when I was a kid, my six shooter looked like a toy. It didn't look like a real gun.
well, that's another thing that years ago they were laws were passed that toy companies couldn't make a gun that looked like a or a toy that looked like a real gun. That's why they started putting those red caps on the end of the barrels. But Cindy,
Yeah.
as you pointed out, when I was a kid, I did have a gun that looked like a real gun. It looked like
Was it a real gun?
no, it wasn't a real gun. It was a toy, but it looked like a pistol. It had a clip that in the bottom that had held toy bullets, and unless you were up close looking at it from a distance, you could have said it was a real gun
Well,
because. But then
you were a kid later in life than I was a kid.
yeah. But
Toy
then
companies.
you had the cap guns, the six shooters, and they looked fairly real.
Mine didn't.
Mine did.
Mine looked like a toy gun that you lifted the thing up and you put the
Yeah,
caps inside and you fired.
yeah. But
Just saying.
but then they started making them where it had the red tip on the end so that you could tell that it was a toy. But evidently, this toy gun that Tamir Rice had didn't have that tip on the end. And somebody had said that there was a person in the park with a gun. And so the cops
But
just rolled up and,
no,
yeah,
the caller said there's a person in the park with a gun. I think it's a toy. But
but,
the officers didn't get that information from the 911 operator.
well, you know,
Sorry,
yeah. What are you sorry for? You
it's
can
a live show.
you can join in, have a discussion. I should get you a headset and put you on camera and
Let's do that.
yeah, yeah.
Excuse me.
That's one thing you should never say to an old person.
Heart attack.
Coughing.
Oh, honey, you
But
want me to live forever, and I'm ready to go.
no, you, you, you can't go till I go. We're going together. Remember that. Yes, we're going together. All right, so let's take a look at some of the other things in the news. Let's see. I will share my screen with you, and we will take a look at some news pages here. My computer is a little slow today, so bear with me. All right, let's scroll up here. Uh, this is one of the top stories here. This is Google News, and uh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg have to recuse herself if Donald Trump wins. Um, I don't know. That's one of the things that's going to be a debate here, I think. I don't know much about what went on with that particular issue. Another thing here, uh, Hillary Clinton at site of Lincoln's speech laments rise of Donald Trump. Well, that's something that everybody, well, a lot of people's so. Can't say much more than that. And then next is Theresa May becomes new British Prime Minister. Well, we'll see how that works out. I hope everybody in the UK
Oh, gosh, darn it.
that helps out for you. What you have going over there, Cindy?
I played a game that got greedy.
You got greedy
Yeah.
and you lost. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, no, I wouldn't have lost, but I said, oh, and then I just need one more, and then I lost. I didn't really need
Uh,
that one more.
and then here is article about what I was talking about. The Baton Rouge police hunt four suspects in gun burglary tied to plot to kill police. Uh, that it was always suspected that there was just more than one person that was planning the police shooting at the uh, protest, but they had only captured the one person, and then they did question one of the protesters because he was marching uh, while carrying a weapon, but that turned out he was just a protester. He wasn't uh, looking to discharge the weapon or fire on police, so they let him go. Uh, and then here, Trump is seeking $10 million from a former aide in a disclosure case. Well, good luck with
Oh, yeah,
that.
that's one of the 3,500 cases, lawsuits that Trump has been involved in. Oh, no, no, he
Yeah,
said 3,501.
yeah. Well, we'll see how that goes.
You read the internet. And it must be true. It was on the internet.
Yeah, it must be true. Let's see. Let's scroll down here and see if we can find some more news. World news says Russia NATO Council no point or silver lining. And then in Venezuela, military to coordinate food medicine distribution. And then thousands protest sex assault at Bull Run in Pamplona, Spain. And then Turkey Prime Minister says aims to develop relations with Syria, Iraq. And Uber is going to suspend operation in Hungary due to government legislation. And then China committed to market reforms, fighting overcapacity. Let's scroll down here and see what else. And in U.S. news, a mayor who served time wants to help ex prisoners get jobs. And then another night, another shooting on Facebook Live. I haven't seen much on Facebook Live. I don't view a lot of those. I normally watch the YouTube channels, the live shows there, such as this one going on right now. So I'll have to let's take a look at that particular article and see what happened. See if we can get that to load up. Because my computer runs a little slowly these days,
It's old.
especially when I have a lot of things open. Well, that too, and I've got a lot of things on it now, and so let's see what this one is. And for everybody watching this, you don't have to worry about uh, having the URL for this article. I'll post it in the description when it is processed for reviewing. So let's see what this says. Less than a week after the troubling images of Philando Castle bloodied by gunshots from a police officer were broadcast on Facebook Live. Another shooting has been streamed as it happened thanks to the popular feature. This time, three men in Norfolk, Virginia, were badly wounded. The authorities said the men, aged 27 to 29, came under attack Tuesday evening as one of them was streaming live video of the group hanging out in a car. I won't read the whole thing. You can go to this article and read it yourself, but seems like a lot of people are using the Facebook Live feature to stream a lot of things these days as they're happening on the streets. So we'll probably be seeing a lot more of these, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It could be good. It's documentation for things that are happening, but when people put stuff on the internet and don't show the whole video or tell the whole story, it can be kind of misleading. Um, like the you only get to see part of what happened, and then people start to draw their own conclusions. And sometimes it's done for sensationalism. As an example, there was a popular YouTuber. I can't remember his name right now. I just saw his video yesterday, and I'll have to look it up if I can. I'll look it up again and I'll put it down in the description. But he had staged a fight with another YouTuber. They had gotten together to choreograph this fight, and it started on Twitter. They started out on Twitter, and then they filmed it and they put it on YouTube. And the whole idea of it was just to see how many hits they could get on this, and how many people would follow this and watch it. And as it turns out, they did get quite a number of retweets and comments. They actually filmed the fight scene. They put it up on YouTube on this guy's channel, and thousands of people, if not millions of people, viewed this, and they all thought it was real. They thought it was an actual fight when it was actually a staged fight by these two YouTubers, and all it was to find out how many people would actually go to this thing and and talk about it and and make a show of it on their channels, and then go to this channel person's channel and watch the actual video, how many hits they would get off of that. And it's surprising that people will click on a YouTube video because it shows something like that, somebody getting beat up or run over or shot, or like the guy that did the prank about his best friend getting kidnapped and killed right in front of him.
That
Which
was sad.
yes, that was sad and it was stupid. And
Yeah, because the kid
yeah,
really thought his
yeah,
best friend got shot and killed.
yeah,
He wouldn't be my best friend for long after that, I'm telling you that.
no. So people do crap like that just so they can get views on their channel, when you know there are other people out there that are doing legitimate stuff and they don't even get noticed. But you put a plane crash, car wreck, a police shooting, kidnapping, a fire, things like that on YouTube, and that gets views. Just like the first video I ever put on my YouTube channel, I started my YouTube channel back in 2008, and right before that, there had been a tornado come through
Highland, Arkansas.
nearby community of us. Yes, Highland, Arkansas. So I took my camera and when I went through there, I filmed of what it looked like, and I put that on my channel. That was my first and only video that I'd had on there for a while, and that got hundreds of views. Now my other stuff that I've put on my channel here only gets a handful of
What do the
views.
news people say? If
And
it
it
bleeds, it leads.
yeah, well, that's true. If it bleeds, it leads, I guess. But I, since then, I've put hundreds of videos up on my channel. I do a daily vlog. I do this show on Wednesdays. I have a computer help show called CQT Computer Quick Tips that I put up there that only gets a handful of views because I don't have anybody dying on camera. Well, that's just how it is. Some things you just don't. If it doesn't cause controversy, I guess. But anyway, I just that's just my take on things. I mean, I don't. I make my videos here, and I hope people find some kind of use out of them. I mean, if something happens around, if another tornado would go through, I'd probably put up more video about that. But it's not for shock value. It's just to keep people informed, and
How many
that's
people go to the Oklahoma City bombing site?
probably a lot of them
We went.
still. Yeah, we went and saw the stuff on the fence that people put up in memory of the people that uh, were lost there. And I'm sure that there are still a lot of people that go to the 9/11 site to remember all the people that were lost there. And those were two events that really made a lot of people think about things, and it not only were the people that lost their lives, but all the families involved in that tragedy. That's something people shouldn't have to go through. Really, it's nobody should have to have that happen to a member of their family. I am going to switch back here. Um, so let's go back to my screen and we will stop. And there I am, back again. And I have one viewer. I'm going to bring up the chat here, see if anybody's in the chat. Hey, hi fi. Thanks for coming, Adam. Thanks for coming in. Mari, thanks for coming to see the show. Um, so I got a few viewers here, one person viewing right now. And I think I will cut this a little short. A friend of mine, Hushin Memer, he was going to start a show at 4 o'clock. And I think I'll drop by there, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the week. And I thank everybody for coming and watching. And If you have anything to say about my show, any comments, suggestions, things like that, just put them down in the comments. And again, that article that I showed here, I'll put a link to that in the description so that people can go and read that for themselves. So, everybody, have a good day and a good rest of the week. And I will see you next week for another episode. Until then, everybody take care. Bye bye.
So long.